Welcome to The Explainer. So let's just dive right into today's topic because it is absolutely fascinating. We are exploring how unchecked power subtly but profoundly alters human perception and the very language we use. And to do this, we're going to use religious congregations like communities of nuns and brothers as a sort of microcosm for this explainer. Now you might be wondering, why them? Well, because these are places built entirely on shared values and spiritual ideals. If power can silently bend perception in environments completely dedicated to virtue, it can happen literally anywhere. We're going to look at how the exact same rule feels completely different depending on who is holding it, and why the gap between comfort and conscience is just so easily ignored.
Here is our roadmap for today. We're going to start with point 1, a tale of two rooms, to look at the physical symptoms of inequality. From there, we'll hit points 2 and 3, what power does to attention, and the gymnastics of conscience, to uncover the psychological causes. Then we'll look at point 4, when members uphold the system. And finally, point 5, how to fix the gap.
All right, let's get into section 1, a tale of two rooms.
To really grasp this divide between comfort and conscience, I want you to picture a stark, totally relatable scenario. It's a situation I'm sure many of us can map onto our own workplaces or organizations. Imagine a young sister asking for a simple desk fan because her room turns into a sweltering oven every afternoon. Or picture a young brother asking for a proper bed because his broken one is just completely throwing out his back. They ask for help, and they are both told no. Actually, it's worse than that. They're told this discomfort is a test of vocation. It's a chance to grow in spiritual detachment. But here is the kicker, right? The superior telling them this is sitting comfortably in an air-conditioned office. And brilliantly illustrating this divide is the fact that the superior has absolutely zero hesitation about their own immediate relief, while denying the exact same relief to a subordinate.
Now here is the crucial point, and it's something we really need to wrap our heads around. Nobody in that exchange thinks they are being dishonest. This is the core paradox of the whole scenario. The superior sitting in the air-conditioned room isn't thinking, "Ha, I deserve this," and they do not. There's no deliberate malice here. It's not some conscious hypocrisy or an individual moral failing. So if they aren't being intentionally cruel, what exactly is going on?
Well, that brings us to section 2, what power does to attention.
To understand why the superior simply doesn't notice this massive disparity, we have to look at the first psychological root cause. Psychologist Dacher Keltner spent years studying what power actually does to people once they get it, and what he found is wild. He found that unchecked power drastically reduces something called perspective taking. As you can see defined here, that's just the basic mental habit of imagining what someone else is experiencing, putting yourself in their shoes. But at the exact same time, power actually increases impulsive behavior. So a person with power reaches for comfort more readily for themselves, like, say, turning on the AC, while simultaneously losing the ability to imagine what it feels like to sweat in the room down the hall.
And this brings us to a really important takeaway. Power creates numbness, not moral collapse. The superior's attention has simply quietly narrowed to their own personal needs. Think about it. Years inside a hierarchy where deference constantly flows upward. That wears down the mental muscle required to stop and ask what an ordinary member's day actually feels like. It creates this structural numbness. And the real tragedy is that this narrowing of attention happens without anyone announcing it, not even to the person it's happening to.
Section 3, the gymnastics of conscience.
So if leaders are structurally numb to the needs of others, what happens when a member actually points it out? Like what happens when they explicitly ask for comfort? To answer this, we turn to the work of psychologist Albert Bandura and his concept of moral disengagement. This is basically the process by which ordinary people commit acts that conflict with their own moral standards, but without feeling like hypocrites. When an ordinary member asks for a fan, the leader's response isn't silence, it's scripture. They use moral disengagement to soothe their conscience, literally convincing themselves that denying a basic comfort is actually a highly virtuous act.
Bandura identified two specific mental moves leaders make to close this gap. First up is moral justification. This is where you reframe a self-serving decision as a higher purpose. Denying the fan isn't cruel, no, it's formation. It's repackaged as a spiritual gift, a necessary lesson in poverty or humility. The second move is euphemistic labeling. This is all about softening the language. You change the name of the act so it stops sounding like what it actually is.
Let's look at this vocabulary shift in action, because it is fascinating. When the superior needs an air conditioner, it's labeled a leadership necessity, something required to carry the heavy burden of responsibility. But when the ordinary member asks for the exact same physical comfort, suddenly it's labeled a worldly attachment or a lack of detachment. I mean, it is the exact same object, the the exact same physical need, but it gets two completely different vocabularies depending entirely on rank. And remember, the leader truly believes their own story. There's no secret, mustache-twirling awareness of bending the rules.
Section 4. When members uphold the system.
Okay, here's the twist. This disparity isn't just maintained from the top down by oblivious leaders. Ordinary members, we're complicit in this dynamic too. Think about what happens when guests visit a community. When a visiting superior arrives, ordinary members instinctively prepare the absolute best room for them. Nobody questions it, it's just called respect. But when an ordinary peer visits the exact same community, that level of care just completely vanishes. The visiting peer gets whatever is free, often the smallest, hottest room, and everyone just shrugs and calls it what was available. The very uncomfortable truth here is that members apply a lesser standard of care to their own peers while fiercely upholding the privileges of the leaders.
Sociologist John Jost actually has a name for this: system justification. People inside a hierarchy, yes, even those who benefit the absolute least from it, tend to defend the arrangement as fair. And why would we do that? Because questioning it causes way too much mental tension. Honestly, it is just much easier to quietly accept that superiors deserve better rooms than to sit with the daily, exhausting discomfort of watching your peers sweat through the night in a broken bed. So everyone quietly agrees to just not ask the question out loud, keeping the system perfectly intact.
Finally, Section 5. How to fix the gap.
Naming the pattern is great and all, but we need actual solutions. We don't need to go hunting for villains here, but we absolutely need structural cures. Fixing this requires action at 3 different levels. First, superiors must deliberately practice perspective taking. Because power naturally erodes empathy, leaders have to actively build the habit of asking themselves, would I accept this exact answer if I were in their shoes? Second, members need to demand precision in language. If you're told a fan violates detachment, calmly ask if that same standard of detachment governs the air-conditioned office next door, right? It's not an accusation, it's just a request for consistency. And finally, institutions must create written, universal physical standards. When the rules for basic physical conditions are exactly the same for an executive office and an ordinary room, you completely remove the interpretive gap where all these convenient justifications live.
So, I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought. Really look closely at this question on the screen. Would the rules you apply to others survive being applied to you first? Whether you're in a religious congregation, a corporate office, or just a local community group, the psychology of power is always at play. Always. Where might you be quietly upholding a double standard simply because the language of your institution allows it? It's definitely something we all need to watch out for. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.